Question 1. When reviewing an organization's adherence to ISO 22324, 2015 guidelines for emergency management and color-coded alerts, what is the primary focus for an internal auditor assessing the effectiveness of emergency plan testing and exercises concerning the alert system? Option A. The extent to which post-exercise evaluations capture actionable insights into the clarity, dissemination, and comprehension of color-coded alerts and lead to documented plan revisions. Option B. The total number of exercises conducted annually, regardless of their scope or the specific alert functionalities tested. Option C. The level of seniority of the personnel participating in the emergency exercises, assuming higher ranks equate to better testing outcomes. Option D. The cost incurred for conducting various types of emergency exercises, such as tabletop simulations and full-scale drills. Correct answer is A. The extent to which post-exercise evaluations capture actionable insights into the clarity, dissemination, and comprehension of color-coded alerts and lead to documented plan revisions. Explanation. The effectiveness of emergency plan testing and exercises is a critical component of an organization's emergency management system, as mandated by principles aligned with ISO 22324, 2015. Internal auditors must evaluate whether these exercises adequately validate the plan's components, including the clarity and utility of color-coded alerts. A key aspect of this evaluation is assessing the feedback mechanisms and how lessons learned are integrated into plan revisions. Specifically, auditors should look for evidence that post-exercise debriefings capture participant observations on the effectiveness of alert dissemination, comprehension of alert meanings across different stakeholder groups, and the practical applicability of response actions triggered by specific alert colors. The process of identifying deficiencies, proposing corrective actions, and tracking their implementation is crucial. This systematic approach ensures that the emergency plan, particularly its alert system, remains relevant, functional, and capable of supporting effective response during actual emergencies. Without a robust feedback loop and a commitment to continuous improvement, exercises become mere simulations rather than valuable tools for enhancing preparedness. The auditor's role is to confirm that this cycle of testing, evaluation, and refinement is operational and contributes to the overall resilience of the organization. Question 2. Following an internal audit of an organization's adherence to ISO 22324, 2015 for emergency color-coded alerts, several minor nonconformities were identified regarding the clarity of alert dissemination protocols for specific hazard types. The audit report recommended specific revisions to the Operational Procedures Manual. What is the internal auditor's primary responsibility concerning these recommendations during the post-audit follow-up phase to ensure the integrity of the organization's emergency management system? Option A. Providing additional training to the emergency response team on general emergency management principles. Option B. Verifying the implementation and effectiveness of the corrective actions taken by the auditee to address the identified nonconformities. Option C. Documenting the auditor's personal opinion on the likelihood of future nonconformities without checking for implemented actions. Option D. Conducting a completely new audit of the alert dissemination protocols to ensure their overall adequacy. The correct answer is B. Verifying the implementation and effectiveness of the corrective actions taken by the auditee to address the identified nonconformities. Explanation. The effectiveness of an internal audit for ISO 22324, 2015 hinges on the systematic follow-up of identified nonconformities and recommendations. Following an audit, the auditor's responsibility extends to verifying the implementation and effectiveness of corrective actions taken by the audited entity. This verification process is crucial for ensuring that the root causes of nonconformities have been addressed, and that the alert system's compliance with the standard is maintained or improved. The auditor must document the follow-up activities, including evidence of corrective action implementation, review of the action's impact, and confirmation of closure. Without this rigorous follow-up, the audit process is incomplete, and the organization may continue to operate with systemic weaknesses in its emergency alert management. The auditor's report on follow-up should clearly state whether the previously identified issues have been resolved to the satisfaction of the standard's requirements. This iterative process reinforces the organization's commitment to continuous improvement in its emergency preparedness and response capabilities, as mandated by the principles of ISO 22324, 2015. Question 3. An internal auditor is evaluating the effectiveness of an organization's emergency plan review cycle for its color-coded alert system, as mandated by ISO 22324, 2015. The auditor has observed that the review process primarily consists of a desk-based check of the plan document against a static checklist of regulatory requirements. Which of the following aspects, if found to be absent from this review process, would represent the most significant deficiency in terms of ensuring the plan's ongoing relevance and operational efficacy for color-coded alerts? Option A. Confirmation that the plan's distribution list includes all designated emergency response personnel and key stakeholders. Option B. Assessment of the financial resources allocated for the maintenance and updating of the color-coded alert infrastructure. Option C. Integration of lessons learned from post-incident analyses and simulation exercises to refine alert thresholds and response protocols. Option D. Verification of the plan's compliance with National Emergency Broadcast System regulations and interoperability standards. The correct answer is C. Integration of lessons learned from post-incident analyses and simulation exercises to refine alert thresholds and response protocols. Explanation. ISO 22324, 2015 emphasizes the continuous improvement of emergency management plans, particularly those incorporating color-coded alerts. An internal auditor's role in reviewing these plans is to ensure their effectiveness, clarity, and alignment with the standard's principles and any applicable jurisdictional requirements. When assessing an organization's emergency plan review process, an auditor must evaluate whether the review incorporates feedback from actual incident responses, drills, and exercises. This feedback loop is critical for identifying deficiencies and opportunities for enhancement in alert dissemination, interpretation, and response action. Furthermore, the auditor must verify that the review process considers changes in the operational environment, potential threat landscapes, and advancements in communication technologies that might impact the efficacy of color-coded alerts. The review should also confirm that the plan's clarity and accessibility for all relevant personnel, including those with diverse linguistic backgrounds or disabilities, are maintained and updated. A robust review process, as envisioned by ISO 22324, 2015, goes beyond mere document checking. It actively seeks to validate the plan's operational readiness and adaptability. Question 4. During an internal audit of an organization's emergency management framework, an auditor is reviewing the implementation of ISO 22324, 2015 guidelines for color-coded alerts. The organization has established a system using 4 distinct colors to communicate different threat severities. The auditor's primary objective is to ascertain the robustness of the organization's internal alert system's alignment with the standard's intent. Which of the following aspects of the organization's color-coded alert system would be of most significant concern to the auditor in demonstrating compliance with the spirit of ISO 22324, 2015? Option A. The adoption of color-coding conventions used by adjacent municipal emergency services, regardless of specific threat level mapping. Option B. The clarity and consistency of the documented definitions linking each color-coded alert level to specific, actionable response protocols and their effective communication to all personnel. Option C. The aesthetic appeal and visual distinctiveness of the chosen colors, ensuring they are easily distinguishable from common signage in the operational environment. Option D. The historical prevalence of specific types of emergencies that have affected the organization in the past, influencing the selection of colors. The correct answer is B. The clarity and consistency of the documented definitions linking each color-coded alert level to specific, actionable response protocols and their effective communication to all personnel. Explanation. The core principle of ISO 22324, 2015 is to establish a standardized, universally understood system for communicating emergency alerts through color coding. The standard emphasizes that the effectiveness of this system hinges on its clear definition and consistent application across various scenarios and jurisdictions. When an internal auditor assesses an organization's adherence to these guidelines, they must verify that the organization's internal alert system aligns with the standard's intent. This involves scrutinizing how the organization has defined the specific threat levels associated with each color, and how these definitions are communicated and understood by all relevant personnel. A critical aspect is ensuring that the organization's chosen color-coded alert levels are directly mapped to distinct, actionable response protocols. The standard mandates that these mappings are not arbitrary, but are based on a thorough risk assessment and a clear understanding of the potential impact of each threat level. Therefore, the auditor's focus should be on the documented rationale and the demonstrable linkage between the defined alert colors and the prescribed organizational actions, ensuring that the system facilitates timely and appropriate decision-making during an emergency. This includes checking for clarity in the communication of these linkages and the training provided to personnel to ensure they can correctly interpret and act upon the alerts. The standard's guidance on color assignment is a framework, and an organization's internal implementation must demonstrate a robust and logical connection between the visual cue, the color, and the required operational response. Question 5. An internal auditor is evaluating an organization's adherence to ISO 22324, 2015 for its emergency management color-coded alert system. The organization has developed a system where specific colors are assigned to different threat levels based on a proprietary risk matrix. The auditor's primary focus should be on verifying which aspect of the organization's implementation to ensure it aligns with the standard's intent, considering that the standard itself does not prescribe specific color assignments. Option A. The cost-effectiveness of the alert system's technological infrastructure and the vendor selection process for its implementation. Option B. The legal compliance of the chosen alert colors with national broadcasting regulations for emergency alerts, irrespective of the system's internal logic. Option C. The establishment of clear, documented criteria for assigning alert levels and the system's capacity for unambiguous communication of emergency status to all relevant stakeholders. Option D. The visual aesthetic appeal and distinctiveness of the chosen alert colors to minimize confusion across different media platforms. The correct answer is C. The establishment of clear, documented criteria for assigning alert levels and the system's capacity for unambiguous communication of emergency status to all relevant stakeholders. Explanation. The purpose of ISO 22324, 2015 is to provide guidelines for the implementation and use of color-coded alerts in emergency management. This standard is not intended to dictate specific alert colors or their meanings, as these are context-dependent and may vary by region or organization. Instead, it focuses on the principles and processes for developing a robust and effective color-coded alert system. An internal auditor assessing compliance with this standard would examine how an organization has established clear criteria for assigning alert levels, ensuring that these assignments are based on objective risk assessments and potential impact. The auditor would also verify that the system facilitates timely and unambiguous communication of emergency status to relevant stakeholders, and that there are mechanisms for review and adaptation of the alert system based on lessons learned from exercises or actual events. The scope of the standard encompasses the entire life cycle of the alert system, from initial design and implementation to ongoing maintenance and improvement, ensuring its continued relevance and effectiveness in supporting emergency management operations. It emphasizes the importance of consistency, clarity, and accessibility in alert dissemination. Question 6. During an internal audit of an organization's adherence to ISO 22324, 2015 guidelines for color-coded alerts, an auditor is examining the documented emergency response plan and a set of incident logs from a recent minor event. The plan outlines a tiered alert system with specific color designations for various threat levels and corresponding mitigation actions. The incident logs, however, contain discrepancies regarding the color code used to signal the event, and the described mitigation actions deviate from those specified in the plan for that particular color code. What is the primary implication of these findings for the auditor's assessment of the organization's emergency management system documentation and its effectiveness? Option A. The emergency response plan itself needs revision to accommodate the observed variations in alert activation and mitigation, implying the plan is not sufficiently flexible. Option B. The incident logs require minor corrections to align with the emergency response plan, suggesting a procedural oversight rather than a systemic issue with the alert system's effectiveness. Option C. The auditor should focus solely on the accuracy of the color-coded designations in the logs, as the mitigation actions are secondary to the initial alert communication. Option D. A significant gap exists between the documented procedures for color-coded alerts and their practical application, indicating a potential failure in the implementation and control of the emergency management system. The correct answer is D. A significant gap exists between the documented procedures for color-coded alerts and their practical application, indicating a potential failure in the implementation and control of the emergency management system. Explanation: the internal auditor's review of documentation for an organization's emergency management system, specifically concerning color-coded alerts as per ISO 22324, 2015, must focus on the alignment between documented procedures and actual implementation, as well as the clarity and comprehensiveness of the records. When assessing the emergency response plan and associated operational procedures, the auditor needs to verify that the defined color-coded alert levels are clearly articulated, linked to specific threat types and corresponding actions, and that these linkages are consistently applied throughout the documentation. Furthermore, the auditor must examine records of past alert activations, including communication logs, incident reports, and post-event reviews, to ensure they accurately reflect the procedures and provide evidence of effective management of the alert system. This includes checking for completeness, accuracy, and the timely generation of these records. The auditor's role is to confirm that the documented system is not only in place, but also functional and supported by reliable data, which is crucial for continuous improvement and demonstrating compliance with the standard's intent. This systematic review ensures the integrity of the alert system and its readiness for actual emergencies. Question 7. When conducting an internal audit of an organization's emergency management system based on ISO 22324, 2015, an auditor is evaluating the rationale behind the assigned color codes for various potential incidents. The organization has a system where crimson is designated for imminent, high-impact events requiring immediate, large-scale evacuation and significant resource deployment, while amber is used for situations with a moderate threat requiring heightened awareness and preparedness but not immediate evacuation. Which of the following criteria, if documented as the primary basis for assigning these color codes, would best align with the principles of ISO 22324, 2015? Option A. The availability of specific personal protective equipment and the duration of the potential incident. Option B. The potential for widespread loss of life and the urgency of evacuation and resource mobilization. Option C. The historical frequency of similar events and the public perception of the color's intensity. Option D. The cost of implementing response measures and the political sensitivity of the event. The correct answer is B. The potential for widespread loss of life and the urgency of evacuation and resource mobilization. Explanation: the core principle of ISO 22324, 2015 regarding the assignment of color codes to emergency situations is to establish a clear, universally understood, and actionable communication system. The standard emphasizes that the selection of a specific color for an alert must be based on a comprehensive risk assessment and the potential impact on human life, infrastructure, and the environment. This assessment should consider the severity of the threat, the urgency of the required response, and the likelihood of escalation. For instance, a situation with immediate, widespread, and potentially catastrophic consequences, requiring rapid evacuation and extensive resource mobilization, would warrant a higher-level alert color than a localized, manageable incident with minimal immediate threat. The standard does not prescribe specific colors for specific events, but provides a framework for organizations to develop their own color coding systems that are contextually relevant and aligned with national or regional emergency management frameworks, such as those outlined by FEMA in the United States or similar bodies internationally. The effectiveness of the system relies on its consistency, clarity of meaning, and the training provided to all stakeholders to ensure proper interpretation and response. An internal auditor would assess whether the organization's chosen color coding system demonstrably reflects the severity and urgency of the identified risks, and whether this alignment is consistently applied across all emergency scenarios and communication channels. This involves reviewing the documented risk assessment processes and the rationale behind the color assignments. Question 8. During an internal audit of a municipal emergency management agency's preparedness for a potential seismic event, what specific aspect of their color-coded alert plan, as guided by ISO 22324, 2015, would an auditor most critically scrutinize to ensure its completeness and accuracy in relation to national seismic alert protocols? Option A. A precise correlation between the defined alert color thresholds and the officially recognized seismic intensity scales mandated by the National Geological Survey, including the specific communication channels designated for each alert level. Option B. The budget allocation for public awareness campaigns unrelated to specific alert levels, focusing instead on general preparedness for natural disasters. Option C. The frequency of internal team-building exercises aimed at fostering camaraderie among emergency response personnel, irrespective of their specific roles during an alert. Option D. The aesthetic design and visual clarity of the alert signage used in public spaces, ensuring it is easily recognizable across different demographic groups. The correct answer is A. The precise correlation between the defined alert color thresholds and the officially recognized seismic intensity scales mandated by the National Geological Survey, including the specific communication channels designated for each alert level. Explanation. When auditing an organization's emergency management system for compliance with ISO 22324, 2015, an internal auditor must assess the completeness and accuracy of their emergency plans. This involves verifying that the plans adequately address all critical aspects of emergency response, including the identification of potential hazards, the establishment of clear communication protocols, the definition of roles and responsibilities, and the provision of necessary resources. A key element is ensuring that the alert levels and their corresponding actions are precisely defined and aligned with established national or regional emergency alert frameworks, such as those mandated by governmental bodies responsible for public safety and disaster management. For example, if a national directive specifies that a Level 3 alert for a chemical spill requires immediate evacuation of a 5-kilometer radius and activation of specific emergency services, the organization's plan must reflect this with equivalent clarity and actionable steps. The auditor must also confirm that the plan includes provisions for regular review and updates, incorporating lessons learned from exercises or actual incidents, and ensuring that personnel are adequately trained on their respective roles and the alert system's operational procedures. The accuracy of the plan is demonstrated by its alignment with these external requirements and its practical feasibility in a real-world emergency scenario. The auditor's evaluation focuses on whether the plan provides a robust and reliable framework for effective emergency management, minimizing potential harm and facilitating a coordinated response. Question 9. An internal auditor is tasked with evaluating the effectiveness of an organization's color-coded alert system implementation, as per ISO 22324, 2015. The organization has multiple facilities across different environmental zones, each with unique potential hazards that trigger distinct alert levels. To ensure a comprehensive assessment that accounts for variations in alert activation and response across these diverse conditions, which sampling methodology would best support the auditor in gathering statistically sound evidence of consistent compliance with the standards guidelines? Option A. Systematic sampling, selecting every /NTH/ alert instance from a sequentially ordered list of all alert records. Option B. Stratified sampling, dividing the population of alert instances by environmental zone and then randomly selecting from each stratum. Option C. Cluster sampling, randomly selecting entire facilities and then examining all alert instances within those selected facilities. Option D. Simple random sampling, selecting alert instances purely by chance from the entire population of alert records across all facilities. The correct answer is B. Stratified sampling, dividing the population of alert instances by environmental zone, and then randomly selecting from each stratum. Explanation. When an internal auditor assesses compliance with ISO 22324, 2015, particularly concerning the effectiveness of color-coded alert systems. The selection of an appropriate sampling technique is crucial for obtaining reliable assurance. The standard emphasizes the need for a systematic approach to verify that alert protocols are consistently applied and understood across various scenarios and organizational levels. The auditor must consider the purpose of the audit, the criticality of the alert system's components, and the available resources. Stratified sampling, where the population of alerts or alert-related documents is divided into homogeneous subgroups, strata, based on relevant characteristics like alert severity, geographical region, or department, allows for more precise estimations of compliance within each subgroup. This method ensures that all significant segments of the alert system are represented in the sample, mitigating the risk of overlooking noncompliance in a particular area. For instance, if the organization operates in diverse climatic zones, each zone could be a stratum, ensuring that alerts relevant to specific weather phenomena are adequately sampled. This contrasts with simple random sampling, which might, by chance, underrepresent certain critical strata, or systematic sampling, which could be biased if there's a periodic pattern in the data. Cluster sampling, while efficient, might be less appropriate if the variability within clusters is high, and the clusters themselves are not representative of the overall alert system's implementation. Therefore, stratified sampling offers a robust approach to achieve representative coverage and enhance the validity of the audit findings concerning the color-coded alert system's adherence to ISO 22324, 2015. Question 10. An internal auditor is observing a multi-agency emergency response exercise simulating a widespread hazardous materials incident. The auditor notes that the primary alert mechanism for an immediate evacuation order within the designated zone was a combination of high-intensity, rapidly flashing red lights, and a distinct, continuous siren tone. This alert was disseminated through portable public address systems and integrated building alarm networks. The auditor's objective is to evaluate the effectiveness of the alert system's design and implementation in accordance with established emergency management protocols and relevant guidelines. Which aspect of the observed alert system most directly aligns with the core principles of ISO 22324, 2015 for color-coded alerts and emergency signaling? Option A. The consistent and clear association of specific visual and auditory signals with a critical threat level and required action, immediate evacuation. Option B. The subjective interpretation of the siren's pitch by responding personnel to gauge the urgency of the situation. Option C. The reliance on a single communication channel, public address systems, to ensure message redundancy. Option D. The use of a multicolor alert palette to differentiate between various levels of threat, even if not all colors were activated during this specific exercise. The correct answer is A. The consistent and clear association of specific visual and auditory signals with a critical threat level and required action, immediate evacuation. Explanation. The scenario describes an internal auditor observing an emergency management exercise. The auditor notes that during a simulated chemical spill, the emergency response team utilized a visual alert system that employed flashing red lights and audible sirens to signify an immediate evacuation order. This aligns with the principles outlined in ISO 22324, 2015, which emphasizes the importance of clear, unambiguous, and universally understood alert signals to convey the severity and required action during an emergency. Specifically, the standard guides organizations in establishing alert levels and corresponding communication methods that minimize confusion and maximize response effectiveness. The auditor's observation that the team's actions directly reflected the established alert protocols for immediate evacuation, as depicted by the red flashing lights and sirens, demonstrates the successful implementation and adherence to the organization's emergency alert system, which is a key aspect of effective emergency management and a critical area for internal audit review under ISO 22324, 2015. The auditor is assessing the practical application of the documented alert system against its intended purpose and effectiveness in a simulated critical event. Question 11. An internal auditor is reviewing the de-escalation procedures for a color-coded alert system implemented by a regional emergency management agency, following the guidelines of ISO 22324, 2015. The agency experienced a significant industrial accident involving a chemical spill, which initially triggered a red alert. During the audit, the auditor finds that while the spill has been contained and environmental monitoring indicates a significant reduction in hazardous airborne particles, the alert level has remained at red for an extended period without clear justification or a documented plan for downgrading. What is the most critical procedural aspect that the auditor should focus on to ensure compliance with the standard's principles for de-escalation? Option A. Verification of clearly defined, evidence-based triggers for downgrading the alert level from red to lower levels, supported by documented monitoring data and official confirmation of hazard mitigation. Option B. Examination of the training records for emergency response personnel on the initial activation of the red alert and their roles during the incident. Option C. Review of the resource allocation plan for maintaining the red alert status, including personnel, equipment, and financial expenditures. Option D. Assessment of the communication strategy employed to inform the public about the continued red alert, ensuring consistency with national emergency broadcast protocols. The correct answer is A. Verification of clearly defined, evidence-based triggers for downgrading the alert level from red to lower levels, supported by documented monitoring data and official confirmation of hazard mitigation. Explanation: the core principle of de-escalation in emergency management, as guided by ISO 22324, 2015, is the systematic reduction of alert levels based on verifiable evidence that the threat or hazard has diminished or been neutralized. This process is not arbitrary, but follows predefined criteria established during the alert system's design and testing phases. An internal auditor's role is to verify that these de-escalation triggers and the subsequent procedural steps are clearly documented, communicated, and consistently applied. The auditor would examine evidence such as post-incident reports, sensor data indicating reduced hazard levels, official pronouncements from relevant authorities confirming the cessation of the emergency, and records of communication disseminated to stakeholders regarding the change in alert status. The auditor also assesses whether the de-escalation process includes confirmation that the residual risks are manageable within normal operational parameters, and that all necessary recovery actions have been initiated or completed. The absence of clear, evidence-based triggers for de-escalation, or a failure to follow established procedures, would represent a nonconformity. The process ensures that resources are released efficiently and that the public is informed of the returning normalcy without undue delay, while still maintaining vigilance for any potential resurgence of the threat. Question 12. An internal auditor is reviewing an organization's adherence to ISO 22324, 2015 guidelines for color-coded emergency alerts. The organization operates in a region with a significant population of individuals who have varying degrees of color vision deficiency, and also utilizes a diverse range of communication platforms, including legacy systems and mobile applications. Which of the following findings would represent the most critical potential communication breakdown in the context of identifying and mitigating risks to the alert system's effectiveness? Option A. The organization's emergency response plan has not been updated in the last 3 years to reflect current demographic changes within the community. Option B. The internal audit report from the previous year did not specifically mention the color coding scheme of the emergency alerts. Option C. The alert system's color palette has not been independently validated for clarity and distinctiveness across all recognized forms of color vision deficiency, and the dissemination strategy does not incorporate redundant, non-color-based alert mechanisms for critical hazard levels. Option D. The emergency management team has not conducted a tabletop exercise involving all relevant departments within the past 6 months. The correct answer is C. The alert system's color palette has not been independently validated for clarity and distinctiveness across all recognized forms of color vision deficiency, and the dissemination strategy does not incorporate redundant, non-color-based alert mechanisms for critical hazard levels. Explanation: the effectiveness of color-coded alerts, as outlined in ISO 22324, 2015, hinges on clear and consistent communication protocols. When an internal auditor assesses an organization's emergency management system, identifying potential communication breakdowns is paramount. A breakdown can occur if the alert system's design or implementation fails to account for the diverse needs and understanding of all stakeholders. This includes ensuring that the chosen colors and their associated meanings are universally understood, or that supplementary information is readily available. For instance, if a specific alert color is used for a hazard that affects a population with limited color perception or a different cultural interpretation of colors, this represents a significant communication gap. Furthermore, the channels used to disseminate these alerts must be reliable and accessible to everyone, including individuals with disabilities or those in areas with poor network coverage. The auditor must therefore evaluate whether the alert system's framework includes provisions for validating the clarity and accessibility of the alert messaging across all intended recipient groups, and whether feedback mechanisms are in place to identify and rectify any misunderstandings or inaccessibility issues. The focus is on proactive identification of vulnerabilities in the communication chain that could lead to delayed or incorrect responses during an emergency. Question 13. An internal auditor is reviewing an organization's emergency management plan, which incorporates ISO 22324/2015 guidelines for color-coded alerts. The audit reveals that while the color codes themselves are defined, the plan lacks explicit linkages between specific alert levels and detailed, actionable response protocols for different departmental units during simulated exercises. To recommend a significant improvement that enhances the plan's practical efficacy and aligns with the spirit of proactive emergency management, what is the most critical enhancement the auditor should propose? Option A. Mandating the development and integration of specific, documented response actions for each color-coded alert level, tailored to departmental functions and clearly communicated through updated training modules. Option B. Recommending the immediate procurement of advanced, real-time alert dissemination technology without first clarifying the response protocols. Option C. Suggesting a review of international emergency alert standards beyond ISO 22324/2015 to identify potentially superior color coding schemes. Option D. Proposing the establishment of a dedicated committee to discuss the philosophical implications of alert system design in emergency management. Correct answer is A. Mandating the development and integration of specific, documented response actions for each color-coded alert level, tailored to departmental functions and clearly communicated through updated training modules. Explanation: the effectiveness of an emergency alert system, particularly one utilizing color-coded alerts as outlined in ISO 22324/2015, hinges on its integration with broader emergency management principles and its ability to adapt. An internal auditor's role is to assess this effectiveness and recommend improvements. When evaluating an organization's emergency plan, an auditor must consider how the color-coded alert system aligns with established emergency response phases, such as preparedness, response, and recovery. A key aspect of improvement lies in ensuring the alert system signals are unambiguous and directly inform actionable steps for different stakeholder groups. This involves verifying that the training provided to personnel explicitly links each color code to specific protective actions, evacuation routes, or shelter-in-place procedures, as mandated by the organization's overarching emergency management framework. Furthermore, the auditor should assess the feedback mechanisms in place for post-incident reviews. These reviews are crucial for identifying any disconnects between the alert system's activation and the actual response, or any instances where the alert's meaning was misinterpreted. Incorporating lessons learned from drills, exercises, and actual events into the alert system's protocols and associated training is paramount for continuous improvement, ensuring the system remains relevant and effective in diverse emergency scenarios. This iterative process, driven by feedback and alignment with best practices in emergency preparedness, is fundamental to enhancing the robustness and reliability of the color-coded alert system. Question 14. An internal auditor is evaluating an organization's emergency management program, which includes a proposed color-coded alert system based on ISO 22324/2015. The organization operates in a region with established national legislation governing public emergency notifications and communication protocols, including specific requirements for the clarity and accessibility of information disseminated during crises. What primary legal and regulatory consideration must the auditor prioritize when assessing the conformity of the proposed color-coded alert system? Option A. Investigating whether the organization has implemented a robust social media strategy to disseminate alert information, irrespective of existing legal communication mandates. Option B. Ensuring the color-coded alert system's design and communication strategy comply with national legislation mandating clear, accessible, and legally defined public emergency notification procedures. Option C. Verifying that the organization has secured all necessary international certifications for emergency communication technologies beyond the ISO 22324/2015 standard. Option D. Confirming that the chosen color palette for the alerts is aesthetically pleasing and universally recognized across different cultural interpretations of color symbolism. The correct answer is B. Ensuring the color-coded alert system's design and communication strategy comply with national legislation mandating clear, accessible, and legally defined public emergency notification procedures. Explanation. The question tests an internal auditor's understanding of how legal and regulatory frameworks interact with the implementation of ISO 22324/2015 guidelines for color-coded alerts in emergency management. Specifically, it probes the auditor's ability to identify the primary legal consideration when establishing alert systems that might impact public safety and communication protocols. In many jurisdictions, emergency alert systems are subject to specific legislation that governs their design, deployment, and the types of information conveyed to ensure public understanding and compliance, thereby preventing potential harm or confusion. Such legislation often mandates clarity, accessibility, and adherence to established communication channels to avoid misinterpretation, which could lead to delayed or inappropriate responses during critical events. Therefore, an auditor would need to assess the organization's compliance with these overarching legal mandates that dictate the foundational principles of public emergency communications, ensuring that the color-coded alerts align with and do not contradict these legal requirements. This involves understanding that while ISO 22324 provides a framework for color coding, the actual implementation must be legally sound and harmonized with national or regional emergency communication laws. Question 15. An internal auditor is tasked with evaluating the initial effectiveness of a newly implemented color-coded emergency alert communication system for a large metropolitan area, designed to comply with ISO 22324/2015. The system utilizes a tiered color spectrum to convey threat levels and corresponding public actions. What is the most comprehensive approach for the auditor to assess the system's readiness and potential effectiveness before its full operational deployment? Option A. Examining the technical infrastructure of the alert system, including server capacity and network redundancy, to ensure it can handle peak loads during a widespread emergency event. Option B. Reviewing the system's design specifications, testing protocols, and documented procedures against the standard's requirements for clarity, reach, and timeliness, including verification of color code alignment with established guidelines and channel diversity. Option C. Conducting a series of public awareness surveys to gauge citizen understanding of the color-coded alerts and their associated actions, and analyzing the results for comprehension levels. Option D. Performing a simulated real-time alert broadcast across all designated communication channels to measure the speed and integrity of message transmission to a representative sample of the population. The correct answer is B. Reviewing the system's design specifications, testing protocols, and documented procedures against the standard's requirements for clarity, reach, and timeliness, including verification of color code alignment with established guidelines and channel diversity. Explanation. The effectiveness of emergency alert communication systems, as outlined in ISO 22324/2015, hinges on a multifaceted evaluation process. An internal auditor assessing these systems must consider not only the technical transmission capabilities, but also the human element of reception and comprehension. Key performance indicators, KPI, for such an audit would include the timeliness of message delivery across various designated channels, e.g., sirens, mobile alerts, broadcast media. The clarity and accuracy of the information conveyed in relation to the alert level and associated actions, and the reach of the notification to the intended population, including vulnerable groups. Furthermore, the system's ability to provide feedback mechanisms or confirmation of receipt, where feasible, is crucial for verifying effectiveness. The auditor must also evaluate the integration of the alert system with broader emergency management plans and the frequency and rigor of testing and drills. The scenario describes a situation where a new alert system is being implemented. The auditor's role is to determine if the system's design and plan deployment adequately address the core requirements of ISO 22324, 2015, specifically concerning the reliable and understandable dissemination of emergency information. The most comprehensive approach for an internal auditor to assess the initial effectiveness of a newly implemented color-coded alert communication system, prior to its full operational deployment, involves a thorough review of the system's design specifications, testing protocols, and documented procedures against the standard's requirements for clarity, reach, and timeliness. This includes verifying that the color coding aligns with established international or national guidelines referenced by the standard, and that the communication channels are diverse and resilient. Question 16. During an internal audit of an organization's adherence to ISO 22324, 2015 for a widespread chemical spill incident involving multiple municipal emergency response teams and a regional transportation authority, what critical integration aspects should the auditor prioritize to identify potential conflicts or gaps in the color-coded alert system's effectiveness? Option A. Review of the organization's historical data on past alert activations and their associated response times, without focusing on interagency consistency. Option B. Examination of the primary communication channels used by the organization for internal alert distribution, disregarding external coordination. Option C. Verification of a documented interagency protocol for harmonizing alert level definitions and transition triggers across all participating entities. Option D. Assessment of the individual alert dissemination capabilities of each responding agency, independent of their color-coded alert definitions. The correct answer is C. Verification of a documented interagency protocol for harmonizing alert level definitions and transition triggers across all participating entities. Explanation. The core of ISO 22324, 2015 is the establishment and consistent application of color-coded alerts for effective emergency management communication. An internal auditor's role is to verify that the organization's alert system aligns with the standard's principles and its own defined protocols. When auditing an organization that has adopted a color-coded alert system for a multi-jurisdictional event, the auditor must assess the integration points between different entities' alert dissemination mechanisms. Specifically, the auditor needs to check if the visual and semantic consistency of the color codes, e.g., red for immediate danger, yellow for caution, is maintained across all participating agencies, and if the transition criteria between alert levels are clearly defined and adhered to by all. Potential gap arises if one agency uses a specific color for a particular threat level, while another uses the same color for different or less severe threat level, or if the trigger conditions for escalating or de-escalating an alert differ significantly without a documented harmonization process. This lack of harmonization can lead to confusion, delayed or inappropriate responses, and ultimately compromise the effectiveness of the overall emergency management effort. The auditor's focus should be on the documented procedures for interagency coordination, the training provided to personnel on shared alert protocols, and evidence of periodic reviews and updates to these protocols to ensure ongoing alignment. The presence of a documented framework for resolving discrepancies in alert interpretation and application between different operational units or external partners is a key indicator of a robust and integrated system. Question 17. An internal auditor tasked with assessing an organization's adherence to ISO 22324, 2015 guidelines for emergency color-coded alerts, observes that current training programs primarily focus on the recognition of individual alert colors and their general threat levels. However, the training materials do not adequately address how personnel should interpret and respond to situations involving multiple, potentially overlapping or conflicting, alert color designations across different communication channels or geographical zones within the organization's operational area. Considering the standard's emphasis on effective and timely response, what specific area of the training and awareness program would yield the most significant improvement in overall emergency preparedness and compliance? Option A. Incorporating advanced scenario-based simulations that require participants to interpret complex combinations of alert colors and contextual data to determine appropriate actions. Option B. Increasing the frequency of refresher courses that reiterate the basic definitions and meanings of each individual alert color. Option C. Developing standardized response protocols that are universally applied regardless of the specific alert color presented. Option D. Implementing a system where only senior management is trained on the nuanced interpretation of layered alert color information. The correct answer is A. Incorporating advanced scenario-based simulations that require participants to interpret complex combinations of alert colors and contextual data to determine appropriate actions. Explanation. The scenario describes an internal auditor reviewing the effectiveness of training programs for emergency alert dissemination within an organization. The auditor's objective is to recommend improvements based on ISO 22324, 2015, which emphasizes clarity, timeliness, and comprehension of emergency alerts. The auditor observes that while the training covers the meaning of different alert colors, e.g., red for immediate danger, yellow for elevated risk, it lacks practical application exercises. Specifically, personnel are not being tested on their ability to interpret complex, multi-layered alert scenarios, or to correctly identify the appropriate response actions based on nuanced combinations of alert colors and contextual information. ISO 22324, 2015, in its guidelines for awareness and training, stresses the importance of not just recognizing symbols, but also understanding the implications for action. Effective training should move beyond simple color recognition to scenario-based simulations that mirror real-world situations, including the potential for overlapping or conflicting information and the need for critical decision-making under pressure. This aligns with the standard's intent to ensure that all personnel can respond appropriately and efficiently to diverse emergency situations. Therefore, the most impactful recommendation for improvement would focus on enhancing the practical, scenario-based components of the training to better prepare individuals for the complexities of real-world emergency, alert interpretation and response. This would involve developing exercises that present varied threat levels, geographical scopes, and communication channels, requiring participants to synthesize information and select the correct protocols, thereby deepening their understanding and reinforcing correct actions beyond rote memorization of color meanings. Question 18. When evaluating the efficacy of an organization's emergency preparedness program, specifically concerning the implementation of ISO 22324, 2015 guidelines for color-coded alerts, what is the primary focus for an internal auditor when reviewing the post-exercise evaluation reports of conducted drills? Option A. Cost-effectiveness of the exercise in relation to the budget allocated for emergency preparedness training and drills. Option B. The extent to which the exercise outcomes directly informed specific, documented revisions to the emergency plan and operational procedures related to color-coded alert activation and response. Option C. The correlation between the exercise's simulated threat level and the specific color code that was activated during the drill. Option D. The number of participants who attended the post-exercise debriefing session and their general feedback on the exercise's realism. Correct answer is B. The extent to which the exercise outcomes directly informed specific, documented revisions to the emergency plan and operational procedures related to color-coded alert activation and response. Explanation. The effectiveness of emergency plan testing and exercises is a cornerstone of ensuring preparedness according to ISO 22324, 2015. An internal auditor reviewing this aspect must assess whether the exercises conducted genuinely validate the alert system's functionality and the organization's response capabilities under realistic conditions. This involves examining the exercise design, execution, and post-exercise evaluation. Key to this assessment is the alignment of exercise objectives with the organization's identified emergency risks and the specific color-coded alert protocols defined in the plan. The auditor should look for evidence that exercises simulate scenarios that could trigger various alert levels, test the clarity and timeliness of message dissemination across all designated channels, and evaluate the effectiveness of response actions triggered by each color code. A critical component is the feedback loop. How are lessons learned from exercises documented, analyzed, and used to update the emergency plan and training programs? This iterative process of testing, evaluating, and refining is essential for maintaining a robust and responsive emergency management system. The auditor's report should focus on the degree to which these exercises provide actionable insights for improvement, rather than simply confirming that exercises took place. This includes verifying that participants understood their roles and the implications of the color-coded alerts during the exercise. Question 19. An internal auditor is tasked with planning an audit of an organization's emergency management system, with a specific focus on the effectiveness of its color-coded alert mechanisms, as outlined in ISO 22324-2015. Considering the preliminary information gathered about the organization's operational context and potential threats, what is the most crucial initial step in developing a comprehensive and effective audit plan for this specific area? Option A. Developing a detailed checklist of all clauses within ISO 22324-2015, irrespective of their direct relevance to the color-coded alert system. Option B. Identifying and engaging with key stakeholders responsible for the design, implementation, and communication of the color-coded alert system, and clearly defining the audit scope to encompass relevant organizational units and processes. Option C. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment of all potential emergency scenarios the organization might face, independent of the existing alert system's design. Option D. Reviewing all available historical incident reports to identify patterns in past alert activations and their perceived effectiveness. The correct answer is B. Identifying and engaging with key stakeholders responsible for the design, implementation, and communication of the color-coded alert system, and clearly defining the audit scope to encompass relevant organizational units and processes. Explanation. When preparing for an internal audit of an organization's adherence to ISO 22324-2015, specifically focusing on the effectiveness of its color-coded alert system, an auditor must prioritize the identification of critical stakeholders and the scope of the audit. The initial planning phase requires a thorough understanding of the organization's emergency management framework, including its risk assessment processes and the specific types of emergencies it anticipates. Crucially, the auditor must determine which departments or units are directly responsible for developing, implementing, and communicating these color-coded alerts. This involves identifying personnel who manage the alert system's technical infrastructure, those involved in the decision-making process for activating specific alert levels, and the personnel responsible for disseminating these alerts to internal staff and potentially external entities, as per relevant national emergency management directives or frameworks that the organization must comply with. The audit plan should then detail the specific clauses of ISO 22324-2015 that will be assessed, the audit methods to be employed, e.g., document review, interviews, observation, and the criteria against which conformance will be measured. This foundational step ensures that the audit is targeted, efficient, and addresses the most critical aspects of the organization's compliance with the standard and any applicable regulatory requirements. Question 20. An internal auditor is assessing the effectiveness of an organization's color-coded alert system, as outlined in ISO 22324-2015, and its integration with the overarching business continuity management system. The auditor observes that while the alert system accurately communicates the severity and nature of an incident, there is a discernible lag in the initiation of specific business continuity actions by departmental continuity teams. This delay stems from a lack of direct, automated linkage between the alert's classification and the activation protocols within the business continuity plans. Considering the auditor's role in recommending improvements, which of the following recommendations would most effectively enhance the integration of the emergency alert system with business continuity operations to ensure timely and coordinated resilience? Option A. Propose the development of a new, independent emergency notification system that runs parallel to the existing color-coded alert system, offering enhanced communication features. Option B. Recommend establishing clear, documented procedures that directly link the color-coded alert levels to the specific activation triggers and phases of predefined business continuity plans, ensuring timely notification of continuity teams and resource mobilization. Option C. Suggest conducting a comprehensive review of all external regulatory requirements pertaining to emergency communications and updating the alert system to comply with any identified gaps. Option D. Advise the organization to increase the frequency of general emergency preparedness drills that do not specifically test the integration between the alert system and business continuity activation. The correct answer is B. Recommend establishing clear, documented procedures that directly link the color-coded alert levels to the specific activation triggers and phases of predefined business continuity plans, ensuring timely notification of continuity teams and resource mobilization. Explanation: the core principle of integrating business continuity with emergency management, as guided by standards like ISO 22324, is to ensure that the response to an emergency also considers the organization's ability to maintain critical functions. An internal auditor reviewing an organization's emergency management system, particularly its color-coded alert mechanisms, would assess how well these alerts trigger and are synchronized with business continuity plans. The auditor needs to determine if the alert system's activation directly informs and initiates the predefined business continuity strategies, such as resource allocation, communication protocols for continuity teams, and the activation of alternate operational sites. This integration ensures a seamless transition from emergency response to business continuity operations, minimizing disruption. Without this direct linkage, emergency alerts might be perceived solely as a safety measure, neglecting their role in signaling the commencement of business continuity activities. Therefore, recommending improvements that explicitly connect the color-coded alert triggers to the activation phases of relevant business continuity plans, including the notification of continuity stakeholders and the mobilization of recovery teams, represents a critical enhancement for organizational resilience and compliance with best practices in emergency and continuity management. This ensures that the emergency alert is not just a warning, but a functional trigger for the entire resilience framework. Question 21. When conducting an internal audit of an organization's adherence to ISO 22324, 2015 guidelines for color-coded emergency alerts, what fundamental principle guides the auditor in determining the scope and depth of audit procedures for various components of the alert system? Option A. Prioritizing audit focus on components with the highest identified risk of failure or misinterpretation, considering both likelihood and potential impact on public safety. Option B. Ensuring an equal distribution of audit effort across all documented procedures and communication channels related to the alert system, regardless of their criticality. Option C. Concentrating audit activities solely on the technical infrastructure responsible for alert dissemination, neglecting the human factors and public comprehension aspects. Option D. Limiting audit scope to verifying compliance with the most recently published national emergency response regulations, without considering the specific context of the organization's alert system design. The correct answer is A. Prioritizing audit focus on components with the highest identified risk of failure or misinterpretation, considering both likelihood and potential impact on public safety. Explanation: the core of a risk-based audit approach within the context of ISO 22324, 2015 is to prioritize audit activities based on the likelihood and impact of potential failures in the emergency management system's color-coded alert mechanisms. This involves identifying critical alert scenarios, assessing the probability of their occurrence, and evaluating the severity of consequences if the alerts fail or are misinterpreted. For an internal auditor, this translates to focusing audit resources on areas that pose the greatest risk to public safety and organizational effectiveness. The process begins with understanding the organization's specific emergency context, the types of hazards it faces, and the design and operational integrity of its color-coded alert system. Key considerations include the clarity and universality of the color codes, the reliability of alert dissemination channels, the effectiveness of public understanding and response protocols, and the integration of these alerts with broader emergency response plans. An auditor would then develop an audit plan that targets these high-risk areas for detailed examination. This might involve reviewing documented procedures, conducting interviews with personnel involved in alert generation and dissemination, observing alert system functionality, and potentially performing simulated alert exercises. The objective is not to audit every aspect with equal intensity, but to ensure that the most significant vulnerabilities are identified and addressed. This proactive stance, aligned with principles of continuous improvement, ensures that the emergency management system remains robust and capable of fulfilling its life-saving purpose. Question 22. When conducting an internal audit of an organization's emergency management system that utilizes color-coded alerts in accordance with ISO 22324, 2015, what specific aspect of the documented procedures and records is paramount for ensuring the system's ongoing relevance and effectiveness? Option A. The detailed inclusion of historical meteorological data for every past alert activation to correlate with environmental factors. Option B. The verbatim inclusion of all National Emergency Broadcast System scripts within the internal alert dissemination protocols. Option C. The explicit mention of specific international maritime signaling flags that correspond to each alert level for redundancy. Option D. The documented existence of a formal process for reviewing and updating the color-coded alert system based on lessons learned and evolving threat assessments. The correct answer is D. The documented existence of a formal process for reviewing and updating the color-coded alert system based on lessons learned and evolving threat assessments. Explanation. The internal auditor's review of documentation for an organization's color-coded alert system, as per ISO 22324, 2015, must focus on ensuring the system's alignment with established emergency management principles and the standards guidelines. This involves verifying that the documented alert levels and their corresponding colors are clearly defined, unambiguous, and readily accessible to all relevant personnel. The auditor needs to confirm that the procedures for issuing, disseminating, and responding to each color-coded alert are detailed, practical, and have been tested through drills or exercises. Furthermore, the auditor must check that records of past alert activations, including the rationale for the alert level, the communication methods used, and any lessons learned, are maintained and analyzed for continuous improvement. The presence of a documented process for reviewing and updating the color-coded alert system based on these lessons learned and changes in the threat landscape is also a critical component of an effective audit. Without this documented review and update mechanism, the system risks becoming outdated and less effective in managing evolving emergency situations. Therefore, the most crucial aspect for the auditor to verify in the documentation is the existence of a formal process for reviewing and updating the color-coded alert system. Question 23. An internal auditor is evaluating the effectiveness of a public sector agency's integration of the ISO 22324, 2015 color-coded alert system with its existing emergency response plans for managing large-scale public health emergencies. The agency has developed a comprehensive plan that includes predefined protocols for various hazard types and response phases. The auditor needs to assess how well the color-coded alerts are operationalized within this existing framework. Which of the following audit findings would most strongly indicate a robust and compliant integration, ensuring the color-coded system enhances, rather than complicates, the agency's emergency preparedness and response capabilities? Option A. The audit confirms that each color-coded alert level e.g., green, yellow, orange, red, is explicitly linked to specific, documented actions, resource allocation triggers, and communication protocols within the agency's overarching emergency response plan, and that these links have been validated through recent operational drills. Option B. The audit reveals that while the color-coded alerts are visually distinct, their direct correlation to specific operational responses or resource mobilization requirements within the existing emergency plans has not been formally documented or tested. Option C. The audit identifies that the color-coded alert system has been implemented as a standalone communication tool, with separate procedures for its activation and dissemination, distinct from the agency's established emergency action plans. Option D. The audit notes that the agency has adopted a widely recognized international color coding standard for its alerts, but has not conducted a formal gap analysis to ensure its alignment with the specific requirements and nuances of ISO 22324, 2015, or its integration with internal emergency procedures. The correct answer is A. The audit confirms that each color-coded alert level E, G, green, yellow, orange, red, is explicitly linked to specific documented actions, resource allocation triggers, and communication protocols within the agency's overarching emergency response plan, and that these links have been validated through recent operational drills. Explanation: the integration of a color-coded alert system, as outlined in ISO 22324, 2015, with existing emergency plans, requires a systematic approach to ensure seamless communication and operational effectiveness during crises. The core principle is to align the alert levels with predefined actions and responsibilities within the broader emergency management framework. This involves mapping each color-coded alert E, G, green, yellow, orange, red, to specific triggers, notification protocols, resource mobilization strategies, and public communication messages that are already documented in the organization's comprehensive emergency response plans. An internal auditor's role is to verify that this mapping is not only documented, but also practically implemented and understood by all relevant personnel. For instance, a yellow alert, signifying an elevated risk or potential incident, should directly correlate with specific actions such as increasing surveillance, pre-positioning certain assets, and initiating preliminary communication chains as detailed in the existing emergency plan. The auditor must assess if the transition between alert levels is clearly defined, if the communication channels for disseminating these alerts are robust and tested, and if the corresponding actions are proportionate and aligned with the established emergency procedures. This process ensures that the color-coded system acts as an enhancement to, rather than a replacement for, the existing emergency planning infrastructure, promoting clarity and efficiency when time is critical. The effectiveness of this integration hinges on the clarity of the documented procedures and the consistent application of these procedures during drills and actual events. Question 24. When conducting an internal audit of an organization's emergency management system based on ISO 22324, 2015 guidelines for color-coded alerts, which aspect of the system's design and implementation would be most critical to evaluate for its direct impact on effective emergency response and recovery operations? Option A. The specific technical specifications of the display hardware used for visual alert presentation in control rooms. Option B. The inclusion of detailed color-coded alert protocols within the organization's general business continuity plan. Option C. The historical frequency of past color-coded alert activations and the documented outcomes of each incident. Option D. The consistency of color-coded alert dissemination across all internal communication platforms and external public announcements. The correct answer is D. The consistency of color-coded alert dissemination across all internal communication platforms and external public announcements. Explanation: the effectiveness of color-coded alerts in an emergency management system, as guided by ISO 22324, 2015, hinges on several critical factors. These factors ensure that the alerts are not only understood, but also lead to appropriate and timely actions by the intended recipients. For an internal auditor assessing such a system, the primary focus should be on the alignment of the alert system with the established emergency preparedness, response, and recovery phases. This involves verifying that the colors and their associated meanings are consistently applied across all communication channels and training materials. Furthermore, the auditor must evaluate the clarity of the color-coded message in conveying the severity and nature of the threat, ensuring it supports swift decision-making. The integration of these alerts with broader emergency response plans, including evacuation procedures, resource allocation, and public information dissemination, is also paramount. A robust system will demonstrate a clear causal link between the alert's issuance and the subsequent actions taken during each phase of the emergency lifecycle. The auditor's role is to confirm that the system's design and implementation facilitate these crucial connections, thereby enhancing overall organizational resilience and public safety. Question 25. When conducting an internal audit for an organization's emergency management system, focusing on the application of ISO 22324, 2015 guidelines for color-coded alerts, what specific aspect of the emergency plan's documentation would an auditor prioritize to ensure the alerts are both understood and actionable by all internal personnel during an incident? Option A. The budget allocated for the procurement and maintenance of visual and auditory alert signaling devices. Option B. The detailed procedures for disseminating each color-coded alert, including the primary and secondary communication methods and the specific, unambiguous actions required for each alert level across all organizational departments. Option C. The legal compliance review of the alert system against national emergency broadcast standards and relevant occupational safety regulations. Option D. The historical data on previous alert activations and the effectiveness of the color coding system in past emergency drills. Correct answer is B. The detailed procedures for disseminating each color-coded alert, including the primary and secondary communication methods, and the specific, unambiguous actions required for each alert level across all organizational departments. Explanation. The effectiveness of an emergency plan hinges on its ability to be understood and acted upon by all relevant parties during a crisis. ISO 22324, 2015 emphasizes that color-coded alerts must be unambiguous and consistently applied. An internal auditor evaluating an organization's emergency management system, specifically its adherence to the guidelines for color-coded alerts as outlined in ISO 22324, 2015, needs to assess whether the plan's communication protocols are clear and actionable for diverse internal stakeholders. This involves verifying that the alert system's design considers various communication channels and accessibility needs, ensuring that all personnel, regardless of their role or location within the facility, can readily interpret and respond to the designated alert colors. The auditor must confirm that the plan details specific actions associated with each color, leaving no room for misinterpretation during high-stress situations. This includes verifying that the training programs reinforce the correct understanding and application of the color-coded alerts across all shifts and departments. The auditor's assessment should also consider the integration of these alerts with broader emergency response procedures, ensuring a cohesive and effective overall emergency management strategy. The completeness and accuracy of the plan are demonstrated when it explicitly addresses how the color-coded alerts will be disseminated, understood, and acted upon by all internal personnel, thereby fulfilling the core intent of ISO 22324, 2015 in establishing a reliable alert system. Question 26. Following an internal audit that identified a recurring issue with the timely dissemination of orange alerts during simulated exercises, the emergency management team implemented a revised communication protocol. As an internal auditor tasked with verifying the effectiveness of this corrective action, which of the following approaches would most rigorously confirm that the root cause has been addressed and recurrence is unlikely? In accordance with ISO 22324, 2015 guidelines. Option A. Confirming that the revised communication protocol is documented, approved, and has been communicated to all relevant personnel, and then observing its application in a subsequent distinct simulation exercise to assess promptness and accuracy. Option B. Comparing the number of orange alerts issued during the current quarter with the number issued in the previous quarter to identify any reduction in frequency. Option C. Obtaining a signed statement from the emergency manager confirming that the new protocol is sufficient to prevent future delays in alert dissemination. Option D. Reviewing the training records of personnel involved in the communication process to ensure they have completed the mandatory refresher course on alert dissemination procedures. The correct answer is A. Confirming that the revised communication protocol is documented, approved, and has been communicated to all relevant personnel, and then observing its application in a subsequent, distinct simulation exercise to assess promptness and accuracy. Explanation. The effectiveness of corrective actions, as per the principles of ISO 22324, 2015, is not solely determined by their implementation, but by their ability to prevent recurrence of the identified nonconformity. An internal auditor verifying corrective actions must assess whether the root cause of the original issue has been adequately addressed. This involves examining the implemented actions to ensure they directly mitigate the root cause and that the system's resilience against similar future events has been demonstrably improved. For example, if a nonconformity was identified in the clarity of a yellow alert notification due to ambiguous wording, a corrective action might involve revising the alert template. However, simply revising the template is insufficient. The auditor must verify that the revised wording has been tested for clarity, e.g., through a simulated communication or feedback mechanism, and that the process for developing and approving alert wording has been updated to prevent future ambiguity. The ultimate measure is the absence of recurrence of the same or a similar nonconformity during subsequent audits or operational monitoring, coupled with evidence that the underlying systemic weakness has been rectified. This aligns with the standard's emphasis on continual improvement and ensuring that emergency management plans are robust and responsive. The focus is on the outcome and the systemic change, not just the procedural step of making a change. Question 27. An internal auditor is reviewing the emergency alert system for the city of Viridia, which employs the color-coded alert system as per ISO 22324/2015 guidelines. The auditor's objective is to assess the system's resilience and reliability in disseminating critical information during widespread disruptions. Which of the following aspects would be of most significant concern to the auditor when evaluating the communication and notification systems supporting these color-coded alerts? Option A. The aesthetic appeal and clarity of the color palette used in the alert notifications across various digital platforms. Option B. The extent to which the notification system utilizes independent, redundant communication pathways that are not reliant on the same primary infrastructure as general public services. Option C. The historical data on public perception and understanding of the color-coded alert meanings over the past 5 years. Option D. The frequency of internal training sessions conducted for personnel responsible for manually activating the alert system. The correct answer is B. The extent to which the notification system utilizes independent, redundant communication pathways that are not reliant on the same primary infrastructure as general public services. Explanation. The question assesses an internal auditor's understanding of the critical interplay between established alert color codes and the efficacy of emergency communication systems under ISO 22324/2015. Specifically, it probes the auditor's ability to evaluate the robustness of a notification system's resilience against common failure points. For an internal auditor examining a municipality's emergency alert system, the primary concern is not merely the existence of color codes, but their functional integration into a system that can reliably disseminate information. This involves verifying that the system's architecture incorporates redundancies, fail-safes, and diverse transmission channels to ensure continuity of operations even when primary communication infrastructure is compromised. Factors such as the system's ability to operate independently of the primary power grid, its capacity for real-time status monitoring and reporting of alert dissemination, and its resilience to cyber attacks are paramount. The question focuses on the auditor's role in verifying these technical and operational safeguards, which are foundational to the reliable deployment of color-coded alerts as outlined in the standard's intent for effective emergency management. The core of the auditor's task is to confirm that the system's design and implementation support the rapid and accurate communication of alerts across multiple, independent pathways, thereby mitigating the risk of information failure during a crisis. Question 28. During an internal audit of an organization's adherence to ISO 22324/2015 for emergency management color-coded alerts, what is the primary focus of an auditor's review regarding the documentation and record-keeping of alert activations? Option A. Assessment of the verbatim wording used in public announcements for each alert, comparing it against pre-approved communication templates. Option B. Examination of the frequency of alert testing and validation exercises, ensuring they occur at least quarterly as per internal policy. Option C. verification that records of each alert activation capture the issuance time, alert level, threat details, dissemination methods, recipients and response actions, alongside evidence of their retention for a defined period. Option D. Confirmation that all alert-related documentation is stored exclusively on cloud-based servers to ensure accessibility during widespread infrastructure failures. The correct answer is C. Verification that records of each alert activation capture the issuance time, alert level, threat details, dissemination methods, recipients and response actions, alongside evidence of their retention for a defined period. Explanation: ISO 22324, 2015, in its guidance for internal auditors concerning color-coded alerts, emphasizes the critical nature of robust documentation and record-keeping for alert activations. Clause 7.3. 2 of the standard specifically addresses the need for maintaining records of alert events. This includes capturing the date and time of alert issuance, the specific alert level and associated threat description, the dissemination channels utilized, the intended recipients, and any actions taken in response. Furthermore, the standard implies the necessity of retaining records pertaining to the review and evaluation of alert effectiveness. An internal auditor would assess the organization system to ensure that these records are complete, accurate, legible, readily retrievable, and protected against unauthorized alteration or loss. The purpose of these records is multifaceted. They provide an audit trail for accountability, support post-incident analysis and lessons learned, demonstrate compliance with the standard and any applicable regulatory requirements, such as those from national emergency management agencies or public safety directives, and serve as a basis for continuous improvement of the alert system. Therefore, an auditor's focus would be on the systematic collection, storage, and retention of all relevant data points associated with each alert activation and its subsequent management. The retention period for these records should align with organizational policies and any legal or regulatory mandates. Question 29. An internal auditor is reviewing the training and awareness programs for personnel regarding the color-coded alert system as per ISO 22324, 2015. The organization has implemented a system where different colors signify varying levels of threat and required actions. The auditor observes that while all employees have received a one-time general overview of the color meanings, there is no specific training for different functional groups, nor are there any periodic refresher sessions or practical drills. Considering the intent of ISO 22324, 2015 to ensure effective emergency communication and response, what is the most significant deficiency in the current training and awareness program from an internal audit perspective? Option A. Lack of role-specific training and regular reinforcement activities for personnel. Option B. Limited availability of training materials in languages other than the primary organizational language. Option C. Insufficient focus on the historical development of color-coded alert systems. Option D. Overemphasis on theoretical understanding without practical application exercises. The correct answer is A. Lack of role-specific training and regular reinforcement activities for personnel. Explanation: the effectiveness of an emergency management system, particularly one relying on color-coded alerts as outlined in ISO 22324, 2015, is critically dependent on the understanding and preparedness of all personnel involved. Training and awareness programs are foundational to ensuring that individuals can correctly interpret and respond to different alert levels. This involves not only understanding the meaning of each color, but also the specific actions and protocols associated with each. For an internal auditor, evaluating the adequacy of such programs requires assessing their comprehensiveness, frequency, and accessibility. A program that only covers basic color recognition, without detailing the procedural implications or the rationale behind the alert system, would be considered insufficient. Furthermore, the training must be tailored to different roles and responsibilities within the organization, as a first responder's actions during a red alert will differ significantly from an administrative staff member's. Regular reinforcement through drills, simulations, and refresher courses is also a key component of maintaining a high level of readiness and ensuring that the system remains effective over time, especially as personnel may change or new threats emerge. The auditor's role is to verify that these programs are not merely theoretical, but are actively contributing to the organization's overall resilience and ability to manage emergencies effectively, aligning with the intent of the standard to foster a consistent and reliable emergency communication framework. Question 30. An internal auditor is tasked with evaluating the efficacy of an organization's color-coded alert system for emergency management, as outlined in ISO 22324, 2015. The auditor is specifically examining the process by which incoming threat intelligence is translated into a specific alert level. Which audit technique would be most effective in validating the accuracy and consistency of this translation process, ensuring that the organization's internal protocols align with the standard's intent for alert classification? Option A. Reviewing a sample of external regulatory compliance reports unrelated to the organization's internal emergency management framework to assess general governance. Option B. Analyzing the cost-effectiveness of the alert system by comparing its operational expenses against industry benchmarks for emergency response technologies. Option C. Conducting a process walkthrough to trace a representative threat scenario from initial detection to final alert dissemination, verifying each step against documented procedures and the standard's guidelines. Option D. Performing a trend analysis of past alert activations to identify patterns in decision-making, without direct engagement with the personnel involved in the classification. Correct answer is C. Conducting a process walkthrough to trace a representative threat scenario from initial detection to final alert dissemination, verifying each step against documented procedures and the standard's guidelines. Explanation. The scenario describes an internal auditor assessing an organization's adherence to ISO 22324, 2015, specifically concerning the effectiveness of its color-coded alert system for emergency management. The auditor is reviewing the process by which the organization determines the appropriate alert level based on incoming threat intelligence. This involves examining the criteria used for classification, the data sources consulted, and the decision-making protocols. A key audit technique for evaluating the robustness of such a process is to conduct a walkthrough or process mapping exercise. This involves tracing a hypothetical or actual alert scenario from its initial detection through to the final dissemination of the corresponding color-coded alert. During this walkthrough, the auditor would interview key personnel involved at each stage, review relevant documentation, e.g., threat assessment reports, decision logs, communication protocols, and observe the actual application of procedures. This method helps identify any gaps, inconsistencies, or deviations from the documented procedures and the standard's intent, ensuring that the alert level is consistently and accurately assigned based on the established parameters. For instance, the auditor would check if the threat intelligence analysis correctly applies the defined thresholds for transitioning from a green to an amber alert, or from amber to red, as stipulated by the organization's internal procedures, aligned with ISO 22324, 2015. This practical, step-by-step verification is crucial for validating the operational effectiveness of the alert system.